Hello everyone, I'm John Higgins. Welcome to my YouTube channel, John Higgins Film Review. And I'm delighted to welcome one and all to this interview with filmmaker Giorgio Clementelli. And he is the director of this interesting documentary called Uncommon Stories of American Horror. Now, it reflects on some of the deeper influences and historical points of reference of one of this most loved of genres. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that as we go. First of all, a warm welcome to you, Giorgio. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks. Fine.
So before we get on to the actual documentary itself, let's talk a little bit about your own background and film start for the viewers.
Okay. I work in television. I've been working since 2001 for Italian television. And then with my production company, I have produced many short movies, documentaries, music videos, and other stuff, other things connected to video production, commercials.
So just out of interest, I mean, because your documentary, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I mean, how do you make the transition from doing what you did in television to actually getting something like this done?
Well, I'm a big fan, obviously, of horror movies, and I've always been interested in horror material. I have read everything about horror movies and horror literature, and I've always wanted to make something to tell stories in a different way. I have tried to tell stories uncommon to tell in a different way the stories that I have always been looking for in my life. Stories of true crime stories connected to horror movies or connected to real events happened in this case in the northeastern side of the US, because in my mind USAH is a trilogy. I will develop it in three parts. This first part was about the southeastern side, the New England, the older states. The second part will be about the south part of the states, and the third part will be about the West and the Midwest.
Okay, so that's interesting, because that's what was quite staggering, and which I think is so great about this documentary, is that the minute you sort of bring up a specific, the narrator brings up a specific location. I mean, you go to Amityville, you go to Camp Crystal Lake, you go to Origins of Freddy. I mean, the thing that fascinated me was the actual link between Houdini, Conan Doyle, and H.P. Lovecraft. Now, I was not aware. I knew Houdini was an escapologist, but I did not know that he was actually into the occult and stuff. So what I wanted to ask you now was actually, let's talk a little bit about the research you did. How the hell did you, because this documentary is under 90 minutes, which is quite immense for a documentary which covers quite a lot of ground. And you cover a lot of interesting subjects. I mean, anybody who's a fan of horror is going to be quite riveted by learning about these things. I mean, when it starts out, you know about Amityville and stuff like that, which is what we're familiar with as Western horror fans. I mean, I'm a big horror fan and I grew up with these films. So tell us a bit about the research that you did.
Well, it's been a long road, because I started searching on every kind of book that I had in my library, and I started with searching on also on Google, because now Google is full of stories. I had to double check each story, because I was looking for uncommon, as the title is. And these are very rare to find, and to check the stories, to find interesting stories. And the most challenging thing was obviously find a fil rouge, a link that connected all these stories, and that's why I decided to use the huge hall with American paintings that are the link for starting these short stories. In my mind, I wanted to make the stories as short as I could for for capturing the attention of the people, for not being too long in telling the stories. This is a thing that I would have wanted to see.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I have to say that it does sort of tap in, because the minute you go from one particular story, you're not dwelling on it. You actually go to another thing. So, given that, and the fact that you had to cover a lot of mileage over the course of it, when you say in the notes that it's a 3,000 thing. So, how did you? First of all, how did you plan it? How did you schedule it? And finally, I mean, how long did it overall take to make and put together?
well, the first thing that I did when I chose the stories, that initially they were less. They were 20 stories I found when I was in Rome, in Italy, and I made on Google Maps the itinerary, the route, starting from New York, and I have planned all this huge trip with the car in that lasted less than 1 month. Sometimes I had even 10 locations per day. That was really a long run, because I had to pull over the car, just make the shootings in that location, then start again and go to the next location. But it was challenging, but very interesting. And while I was on location, I found more interesting stories. And I found 10 more stories to tell, talking to people, searching on other, also on Google, also searching, okay, what happened in this location? This is really interesting. I didn't know. And
Mhm.
so I decided to add more stories, make some other stories a little bit shorter, to stay in the 90 minutes. That was my goal, not to go over. It was challenging but very interesting. And then the big challenge was finding a link, as I told you, to connect all the stories, because I had to find for each story a link to the next one that was connected to art, to the painting, but also to the contents of the previous story. This was my goal, for not making random stories.
Yeah. I've got to ask you, I mean, obviously, when you're in the presence of all these evil stories, I mean, there's so much supernatural. I mean, that was what was fascinating. I mean, we learned about the background to the Crucible. We learned about Plymouth Rock and the Mayflower. I mean, as in addition to some of the the influences on Psycho. I mean, the big house that is still there, the actual influence on the old dark house in Hitchcock's classic. So, out of all the stories you found out, is there anything that particularly spooked you that you were like, I want to get out of it? Was there anything that kind of leapt out of you where you just thought, I've got to get out of here?
Absolutely, absolutely. When I went in Letchworth, when I went to the village that now is a national park, I think. But when I was inside those buildings, they were really creepy, and also in other locations, I couldn't go inside the Amityville house, because that's people living there. But in many other places, I really felt something. I really felt the need to, okay, I have to make the shootings and then leave as soon as I can.
I've got to ask you because I mean that was the fascinating thing about let's just touch on the Amityville thing, because the Amityville house, for my money, is actually even scarier than the Psycho house or any of the other houses that I've seen in films over the years. I mean, Crystal Lake, for example, is I think is scary because of what Sean Cunningham did, but seeing the house now is like it was fascinating. The two windows are like eyes and stuff, and we, put that together with Lalo Schifrin thing. So the other story that fascinated me was the couple who inspired the Conjuring series of films. I mean, could you tell us a bit more about that? And also, did you speak to people who knew them, knew were the relatives that you spoke to, who were associated with them?
Well, no, I didn't speak to them. I made researches. I went to the house, but I couldn't get in touch with Mr. Sperra. I tried to talk to him. He holds the legacy of the Warrens. He's the son-in-law. I tried to speak to him, but I couldn't. Then I went to an exhibition with all the artifacts to make the shootings of the objects, but unfortunately I couldn't talk to him. But I talked to the nephew of Miss Warren. And he told me some things about her grandmother. And then I read many other things about the house and about other cases that they investigated.
So, funny enough, one question that I'm curious about, which before we move on, is obviously because you're an Italian native, and the fact that Italian horror is something that's touched on the conscious of the world, and given the influence of people like Bava and Fulci and Argento, for example, what are you planning to do something similar in Rome, in Italy? Because there's a fascinating culture. Because what's interesting, European horror, certainly in Spain, for example, with people like Guillermo del Toro and people like that. So, I mean, is that something you're looking at for the future?
Well, absolutely. My goal is completing the trilogy of U.S. Uncommon Stories, and then I would like to expand this format to other countries, starting from Italy, if it is possible, and from England, because we have here in Italy we have a lot of legends, a lot of stories, and I'd like to tell something connected to very old stories, connected to the Romans, connected to the Middle Ages, because what I have always found, I like the Gothic movies, but I think that we have here in Italy we have a legacy much older that we can talk about. We have all the legends from Plautus and other authors, Latin. I have made many researches about legends and myths of the Italian lore.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of things to talk about: the witch of Benevento, the streaks. There is the legend of the streaks told by Ovidio, Latin. There's a lot of things I'd like to talk about.
Yeah, but it's great because I mean, one of my favorite scenes, certainly in history, is the one where Gregory Peck and David Warner go to Italy and they're sort of they discover the dark thing. No spoilers here, but and I'm a big fan of Fulci's The Beyond and stuff, and House by the Cemetery, and Suspiria and Tenebrae. So I look forward to seeing that. Following on from that, I mean, obviously this is a documentary, but have you written anything like a more narrative horror thing for consideration? I mean, I understand that you're working on something at the moment called The Witch of. No, that's somebody else. Sorry about that. I think, it's. I'm just curious to know: is there a particular story that you would love to sort of use as a point of reference for a narrative horror film?
Well, I have written 3 feature films, three horror feature films. I never succeeded in making them to find a production, because maybe they are too dairy. They are, as I told you, they are inspired by the Italian lore, and it's hard to convince the producers that it's a subject that can be worth telling a story, because many producers they want to be sure and to make things that already worked elsewhere. And so I'd like to tell these stories that I have written with a friend of mine, a screenplayer, about these Italian lore stories.
So obviously, let's talk a little bit about the overall reaction to the film, because the film, I mean, how tell us a bit about how long the film's been out. I mean, what's been the reaction at festivals? I mean, where has it won any awards? I mean, and also where can people see it?
Well, now the movie will premiere in 2 weeks here in Italy at Cinecittà Award. We will have the world premiere here in the Italian version, and then we'll premiere the English version in Berlin. This will be the first time that will be screened at an audience. I hope that other festivals will host my movie, and I hope the audience will appreciate the hard job that I have done, because it's been a full 1 year of work, editing, creating the images, making with the drawers, all the things that illustrate the movie, illustrate all the stories. So I hope that the audience will appreciate all this hard job.
I have to say that I think it will certainly hit with certain audiences in the UK. I mean, I'm a regular at London Fright Fest, and also there's a horror and sea film festival as well, which is run, and there's the Romford Film Festival as well. So there are a few indie film festivals in the UK that you could consider. I don't know if you've done that yet. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on your film school experience with Mediaset. You were a graduate of Mediaset. So tell us a bit more about your evolution briefly, and what did you learn? What lessons have you learned from those experiences that have sort of taken you forward to where you are today?
Well, at school, I have learned the main things. The main things are how to position a camera, how to use the lights, all the scholar things. What is more important is practicing. I have learned more making my own short movies, my documentaries, and other things that than in the school. That's the real thing.
Okay.
Because each one has to find his own way of telling, I think. And the only way to find this way of storytelling is trying, and find your own way.
Okay. We're going to wrap up in a minute. I've got 2 final questions for you. I mean, after these, I mean, obviously we've touched on the trilogy that you're planning to. I guess that's going to be your immediate goal. But what is the long-term plan? What would you like to look at in the future? I mean, what big projects are you keen to? Do you have any pet projects and dream projects you'd like to see realized?
Well, I'd like to make the movies that I have written, as I told you, because I really would like to tell these stories about the Italian lore. There is one that I believe much in this movie, and I hope that one day I will have the chance to make it. But it's really expensive, really expensive, because it's gonna be something that involved many things and many people. But I hope to have the chance to tell this story one day.
Yeah, okay. And my final question is, what are you most proud of about your career to date?
My
Proud of what do you think that, you know, when you look back and you think, I'm really pleased with where I am in my career? I mean, what gives you pride and positive energy?
Well, absolutely, this movie USAH, because it's something that I have done mm, on my own. I have written, I have shot by myself, I have planned everything, I have produced, edited, I did everything, almost everything, except for the music and the graphics. But I'm really proud now watching the movie complete. I'm really proud of what I have done with my own means, with
Yeah.
with all I could.
Yeah. Well, Giorgio, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, first of all, I think it's a winner. It's a fantastic documentary. I mean, I'm probably going to watch it a couple of more times because I think it's got such a great because there's so much information to take in. So wrapping up, USAH is, as Giorgio mentioned, is premiering in Italy soon and will be at Berlin, and which will be the English language version. If there are any festival directors out there across the world, please do consider it. Support a filmmaker like Giorgio because, as I say, he's a one-man band, I suppose. What he's just said. I mean, with one or two exceptions. Just wrapping up. You can watch this and other interviews on my YouTube channel, John Higgins Film Review. Please do support independent filmmakers and independent film festivals. If you are local and you have a local film festival, get along to it, support it. They need your help. Network, get to meet new filmmakers and perhaps make films yourself. For other articles, interviews, and reviews, you can go to filmandtvnow.com and also my new film resource website, What Movie. And by all means, just stay positive. And Giorgio, thank you again for joining me. And thanks again for watching.
Thank you very much.